Here is the latest Higher Summits forecast brought to you by our friends at the Mount Washington Observatory.
Weather above treeline in the White Mountains is often wildly different than at our trailheads. Before you hike, check the Higher Summits forecast at mountwashington.org. Weather observers working at the nonprofit Mount Washington Observatory write this elevation-based forecast every morning and afternoon. Search and rescue teams, avalanche experts, and backcountry guides all rely on the Higher Summits forecast to anticipate weather conditions above treeline. You should too. Go to mountwashington.org or text forecast to 603-356-2137.
Hey, it's Stomp here, blowing the dust off my microphone to give you the forecast for the weekend of April 19th, 2025. Friday, in the clear under mostly sunny skies, becoming increasingly cloudy late. Slight chance of rain showers by the late afternoon. High rising to the mid-30s. Winds will be west, shifting southwest at 30 to 50 miles per hour early, 25 to 40 miles per hour midday, and 40 to 55 miles per hour with gusts up to 70 miles per hour later. The wind chill will be rising to 10 to 20 above. Friday night, starting in the clear under mostly cloudy skies, then trending into the clouds with rain likely. Slight chance of thunderstorms. Yikes. All right. So low rising to the lower 40s. Winds will be southwest, shifting west at 40 to 55 miles per hour, increasing to 50 to 70 miles per hour, with gusts up to 85 miles per hour. And the wind chill will be rising to 20 to 30 above. And then finally, Saturday, in the clouds with rain likely, trending to mostly in the clouds under mostly cloudy skies with a chance of rain. High will be in the mid-40s. Winds will be west at 50 to 70 miles per hour with gusts up to 90 miles per hour. And the wind chill will be 20 to 30 above. Have a great weekend, everybody.
Broadcasting from the Woodpecker Studio in the great state of New Hampshire, welcome to the Sounds Like a Search and Rescue podcast, where we discuss all things related to hiking and search and rescue in the White Mountains of New Hampshire. Here are your hosts, Mike and Stomp.
All right, Andy, here we go.
Right.
You're getting a promotion. You're your co-host now.
Yeah, the step up.
It is. This is your big moment. So welcome to episode 192 of the Sounds Like a Search and Rescue podcast. This week, I'm joined by co-host Andy Vilaine, who, when he's not co-hosting here or he's out hiking, he is the TrainMaster at the Cog Railway. So Andy will be giving us a detailed trip report of his recent solo hike to Mount Katahdin. Plus, we're going to break down everything you need to know about hiking in Baxter State Park. We'll do a little winter, we'll do a little summer stuff. We're going to do a longer update on Stomp. Everyone's been asking Andy about Stomp. They want more details, so I've got it for the listeners. And then also we're going to talk about when ice out will come on Lake Winnipesaukee. We've got an update on a hiking-based film that's coming to Lincoln this summer, and they're putting out calls for actors, so I'll give you the info on that. And then We've got a recent rescue on one of Stomp's favorite mountains, Mount Cardigan. We've got news about weather apps. We've got rumblings of a serial killer in New England. We'll do notable hikes and then some national search and rescue stories. So I'm Mike.
I'm Andy. Let's get started.
Let's get started!
All right, you didn't screw that up too bad. I actually messed that up a little bit, so awesome. So, all right, let's go into our friend Christina's Wild Raven endurance coaching and welcome her, and then we'll come back out on the other side. So,
All right.
Hi, I'm Christina from Wild Raven Endurance Coaching. I work with athletes of all levels, from hikers to triathletes, helping you reach your goals with personalized guidance. With years of experience hiking, mountain biking, and trail running across New England, I also have a deep knowledge of the New Hampshire 4,000 footers and the surrounding trails. Whether you're a beginner hiker or a seasoned athlete, I'll guide you towards your goals, reducing injury risk and improving your performance through smart, tailored coaching. Are you looking to transition from hiking to mountain running? I'm here to make that journey easier too. My approach combines strength training, mindfulness, and life balance on and off the trail. Let me help you find more joy in your sport while getting stronger and healthier along the way. Visit www.coaching.christinafolsik.com and start your adventure today.
all right. So, thank you, Christina. Reach out to her if you want to get in shape. So. And then, Andy, do you ever just get inspired to get in shape? You just decide to run up the Cog every once in a while. Do you ever do that, or is that just not novel to you?
I actually deplore the conditions next to our tracks for running. I actually despise when we do race the Cog. I am just blown away by the fact that people are running that rough trackside trail, and I go through spurts of when I want to trail run and when I just want to plod along at my slow pace. And usually I like to speed my downs pretty good. So when I'm coming down from something and I'm getting towards the end of my day, I like to really pick it up. But I used to be known as a really slow hiker, and now I've started paying attention to my time. So I've been known to trail run for my large 240-pound frame. So I'm getting out there and I'm picking up my feet a little more.
All right, that's good. Yeah, and I think I've really only hiked down the Cog in the winter. I've gotten views of it. It's not that bad actually when you connect from the Gulf side to that section there. But yeah, looking down, it does look a little bit like it's not completely flat. It drops off a little bit, and it's probably not perfect for running. So
yeah, I'm not the most graceful of the bunch when running over loose scree or certain other things. So I've yet to run. I've done a lot of track work and I've never actually used the Cog as a hiking link of any kind. Okay. In spite of me giving a lot of people advice about it, I've just always, either stayed on Ammo or stayed on Jewel if I've been on that west side. But it's a good option, and we're looking forward to another year of watching people try to beat the train. Right.
Yeah, that'll be a fun race for sure. Now, how was the Cog winter season? I know that you guys get a lot of visitors. I don't know how busy it is during the week, but the weekends when I've been over there, there's a big crowd at the middle part there where you've got the fires pits going, and then you get a lot of skiers that head up to Jacob's Ladder and then come down. Has it been a good season for the winter?
It has, yeah. We've really expanded the offerings at our Wambeck station there. So when the train goes up, it's roughly 4,000 feet elevation. We've built kind of a backcountry little spot to host folks. There's 3-level viewing platforms and some warming huts. We just recently connected electricity to the huts, which is only really for heat purposes because we were getting a little bit turned off by the idea of running propane heaters inside the buildings. Yeah. And it's a great spot to really take in the rugged winterscape of Mount Washington, and folks can enjoy the fire pit. We've definitely seen increased ridership on weekends, holidays, vacation weeks. Midweek can be a little slow, but sometimes that's the best time to come because then it's you and a handful of people around that fire pit roasting marshmallows. You can cook a hot dog and enjoy the views off to the west, and you can see up to the lake's hut, and it's really striking from that vantage point right there.
Yeah, it's a cool view. I like hiking down there, and you can. It's nice because you can spot the base station, and you know where you're going, and you can sense how quickly you're moving. And then when are you opening up for the summer? When do you guys expect that you're going to be able to do? Is it just it's Memorial Day, right, when the summit opens?
Right. So the Sherman Adams State Park building will open Memorial Day weekend. We have our preseason summit runs, which are actually coming right up. We're going to start weather dependent, but it's looking agreeable right now, May 3rd. And what we're going to do from May 3rd until Memorial Day is basically an adjusted schedule where we stay a half hour at the summit. The train lays over with the passengers, and they can explore around. They can make their way up to the summit sign if the conditions are agreeable, or they can get back in the train for shelter or heat and then come down, rather than the hour stay that we give them when the full facilities are open up there and the state park is operating. So we'll have a few weeks of kind of our shoulder season summit runs that are coming right up around the corner on May 3rd.
Okay, yeah, and those will probably be worthwhile. I mean, probably the weather will be a little bit colder, but it's a good opportunity for people if they want to be up there with less crowds. So yeah, that sounds pretty cool. I didn't know. I forgot whether or not you guys go up before the state park fully opens up. So that is fun. And then from a maintenance perspective, do you have to do a lot of work on that section above 4,000 feet, or you're going up above 4,000 feet occasionally, but not as frequently, right?
Yeah, we'll go up, like myself and other crew members will go up to keep the tracks clear above there periodically, so we can assist in rescues if called upon, and also so the snow drifts don't become untenable for getting things going in the spring season. But it's not officially open to passenger traffic until it's inspected by our track foreman. So that's going to be coming right up around the corner, and he'll be putting the track back into service. And the track crew will assess any blocking that needs to get tended to and things. But right now, he did. Our track foreman took a look just about a week ago, and things are looking in good shape. So we're going to be ready to roll right into regular track maintenance, and nothing pressing is on the agenda, which is good.
Nice. And then any big capital projects going on? I feel like you were talking about maybe doing some bigger building projects, but I don't know. Is there anything interesting going on at the base station? Any new additions?
Nothing yet. There's some things that are sort of on the docket where we might be getting into. That's because they're sort of not official yet. We're not really talking about them, other than the fact that we are going to expand the shop facility slightly. We built a new shop facility just a few years ago, and we're now going to incorporate an addition to that will supplant the disused shop facilities that are still on the property that are very dated. Spaces where we can't really work in anymore. So that'll be some development that's going on. And we just replaced the trackage at the base that runs from the shop to the station with brand new track and grading the roadbed there. So that was a big undertaking. And then we've got to do the track that's parallel to that coming up this season. So we're biting off chunks at a time, but there's some things, there's a big master plan that we're putting into motion for sure. All
right. Well, I got an idea for you, and I'm trademarking it, but you guys can have it for free. But the Cog Brewery, the Cog Brewing Company, right?
That could get some traction, because we've thought about, we have this old shop that's got a brick floor,
right?
1800s. And what better use, we can't work in there, and it doesn't meet our needs as a working environment, but that as a brewery, I mean, the historic nature of that building, that brick floor, that history, I mean, that could be something right there. And I think people would really flock to something like that.
Oh, yeah. No doubt about it. So, all right. Well, we'll keep an eye out. You keep us updated, and you tell us what you can tell us when you can tell us. But the other thing I wanted to hit you up on is I got the opportunity. So the COG was involved in a recent rescue. So we covered this like 2 weeks ago. It was like 4 or 5 hikers from Canada that one of them had gotten in trouble. So it was not a great weather day. And I think that they got caught in icy conditions. One of them slipped, fell, broke their leg. So you guys were able to get rescue teams up on the COG. How far up were you able to take them?
So we went up to about 5,000, really about 5,200 feet, right where the West Side Trail cuts under the track, an area that we call Skyline on the railway. And that's where we were able to put teams in.
Right. That's where a lot of the hikers moon you guys, right? Is the Skyline area.
Yeah, right at Skyline, either on the AT on Gulf side itself, or down by by Skyline there, where any place where the trails get really close to tracks is where there's the risk of a full moon.
Right. So what happens? You get a call and they're like, hey, we get a rescue. Can you guys help? How do you determine whether or not it's viable to take a real car up there or an engine up there?
So there's a couple factors in play. We always want to assist. Anytime we get a call, and those calls come from Fish and Game, to assist in a rescue, we want to help. And the sort of decision-making factors that go into that is I look at how accessible is the track, what's the drifting like, what are the temperatures like for the operation of the equipment, what can we do to minimize impact on the rescuers, but also onto any risk to the track structure, the operating equipment, and the COG personnel that may be assisting. So there's a lot of things to weigh there. I had known in this case that we had just recently cleared the track, and we had an actual stretch of some pretty good melt and warm weather. So I knew snow and ice wouldn't be an issue to our travel on the train. So we'd be able to get the train to the West Side Trail without a snow issue of any kind, and actually get a coach up. Because some of the drifts around Jacob's Ladder, they can really pound into the point where even though our snowblower train can get through, the coach is just a touch wider than what that snowblower cuts through. So if the drifting is really high on either side, there could be a situation where the coach might not be able to get through, and then we're limited by how many rescuers we can fit in the engine at a time going up through there. So definitely some things to weigh, but this was actually, the timing was fortunate that it was accessible for a full coach to be able to get all the way up there.
All right. So you get there, you're prepping the engine, and then you got to wait for the rescue teams to go up. Do you go up like multiple times? Is it better for you to go up, drop people off, and then head right down, or is it better for you to go up, wait, and then have them come back? What's the preference? I would assume you'd want to keep the train moving if you could.
Yeah, it actually does help with the warming of fluids on board. So we've got hydraulic fluid for drive. We've got diesel fuel that circulates. So if we can keep the train in motion, it's just going to keep that operating temperature under the hood of the locomotive up and at a place where the viscosity, the fuels and lubricants and hydraulic oil are going to be where we want them. In this case, it worked out very well because we were able to get one round of rescuers up, start leaving the base just after 6 o'clock and get them up to Skyline on the West Side Trail, and then come down, get another round of rescuers. And then the train can sit up there, but we usually are mindful of pulling it out of the worst impact of the wind so that it's not being rapidly cooled by wind-blown effect, especially from underneath. So we'll kind of take into account what direction the wind's coming and where we can kind of position the train to stay up there to wait for rescuers. And if we needed to, we could always run it back and forth if that became an issue as well.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. It's the same idea of like us winter hiking, like keep moving so you can, you can keep warm. So that's funny. And then so you get up there, and then the rescue team. We covered the story, so they went out. It still was about a mile for them to get out to the rescue, I think, right?
Yeah, just about. So they had to go over, beyond Clay, and the group, they were actually off trail there. And that would have been part of the issue why the fall had happened. And the terrain was exceptionally disagreeable. I mean, it was just awful with the glaze ice. You couldn't trust no rock, no surface was. I mean, if you didn't have traction, there was no way you could gain any footing up there. It was some of the worst icing I had seen this season, and just a really, fortunate circumstance for that crew that were able to very hastily dispatch rescuers up, because hypothermia definitely a real concern.
Yeah, and it's I don't play around with the icing conditions, because what I find too is or if you have crampons, it's probably better sometimes, but even microspikes, crampons, a lot of times if you're going on like a thin coverage of ice, you don't always bite, because sometimes like you've had like bare rock and then it's icing over, but it's such a thin layer that it's slippery, but it's not thick enough to bite. So you can run into problems even if you have traction. It's not a good, it's not a good time to hike when you get that glaze.
Yeah, no, it's a lot of folks found that the crampons were summarily useless, and spikes actually did better in the conditions that they found. And you're absolutely right that the amount of bite that you're able to get with your traction is extremely limited. So you can use rock spikes thinking you're going to be on rocks, but then if they're not sharp, you're not getting any bite into the limited real estate of ice that's there, and there's really no good play there. So it's just really bad conditions for anyone to be out when it's icing like that.
Yeah. And then I'm sure the rescue team's psyched, because essentially what you're doing is if you can't get the train up there, then they're looking at probably hiking about 3.5 miles up, maybe 4, and then another 3.5, 4 miles down. This way, they're really doing like 2 miles round trip, and they're not doing a ton of elevation. So it really makes it really sped it up for them, which is huge.
Yeah, and that's the goal. That's what we want to provide if we at all can. So that sped up point of access, and then basically cut down the round trip time, and then the litter carry over. While it's icy terrain, it's at least more level icy terrain. And there's always that debate, should you get down below tree line as soon as possible? Is that the script for every rescue? And there are variables that come into play. If you've got a rescue vehicle that is accessible in one way and the conditions are not prohibitive to stay above tree line to access that, these are things you have to weigh in the grand scope of a rescue. And you can't always have a cookie cutter approach of you always go down, you always hit below tree line. That is a good sort of standby, but in some cases there are reasons for why you may want to explore another option that's going to expedite things.
Right. So, well, you guys definitely stepped up once again. People talk a lot of shit about the Cog sometimes, but you guys are there when needed. And this is like, multiple times. We'll probably talk about another, you had a rescue on the other side last winter.
Right.
So, and I think the deal with my guess when we talked about this rescue previously, again, it's like, they're not local. They're probably thinking like, look, this is the one shot I have on this weekend. So they roll the dice on the weather. So listeners, like you gotta be able to change your plans or take down the expectations if the weather is not going to be there. If you press, you can get in trouble.
Right. Be adaptable. Don't have summit fever, and check that forecast. If you have a plan and you're excited about it and that forecast, says heed caution here, listen to that. Don't just bowl into it thinking that that whatever you have out there, you've got enough gear to deal with. That's not always the case. And, these guys were very, very lucky to be able to have the result that wound up coming to play here.
Right. All right. Well, thanks again to you and the Cog for helping out there. Now, I want to move on to another topic here. We're getting a lot of questions about Stomp, Andy. So people are like, is Stomp okay? What's going on? Are you guys like breaking up forever? So I wanted to just take a few minutes to just give a brief update on what's going on with Stomp. And I feel like we owe the listeners a little bit more detail. So I put together just a quick, well, it's not really quick. It's going to be about 10 minutes. It's going to be heartwarming, touching. So if you could indulge me for a little bit, I'm going to just give a little bit of the origin story of Mike and Stomp, and then I'm going to give people an update on what's going on with Stomp. So let me get into it. All right, so before I get into talking about Stomp, I want to start off with a little personal story that I'm going to build on, and eventually I will get to the Stomp update. So as a reminder, when you listen to this story, think about how powerful, small, unplanned moments can be, because there's a lot of those involved with me and Stomp's relationships. I've been reflecting on it a little bit. So sometimes those random things, when we are least expecting it, shape us the most. So starting off when I was young, when I was a kid, we got a rabbit. It was on a whim at the Topsville Fairground. And at first, everybody loved the rabbit. It was a novelty. But I had two brothers, and before long, other things took over. We were interested in sports, dirt bikes, roaming around town on our bikes with friends, and otherwise just out causing trouble. So the rabbit ended up in a pretty big cage in the backyard. And, we didn't think much about it aside from making sure that it was fed and had water. And what we didn't realize at the time is that when you leave a rabbit in a cage, it starts to go a little wild. So eventually the rabbit chewed its way out. And one day we looked out the window of our porch and we saw it hopping around the yard. The whole family jumped up to rush outside to chase the rabbit down, with my father leading the way. So now I love my dad, and he's actually, like, at this point right now, he's been on his own kind of wellness journey. But at the time, he was the kind of guy who wore jeans at the beach. And at the time, he smoked a pack of cigarettes a day, and he wasn't exactly athletic. So watching him try to chase that rabbit down became a core memory for me. It was one of those little moments that sticks with me forever. And I remember the reason it stuck with me so deeply is that there was a shock realizing that my father couldn't run. You know, he'd take a couple of steps, stop, and he'd be completely out of breath, off balance. I didn't have the words at the time. I was a young kid, but it really disturbed me, and it hit me hard. And for whatever reason, that moment always stuck with me in the back of my mind. I would always think, like, my father can't run. And I think that's when I quietly promised myself that I would never be in a situation where I couldn't run. So I joke about it now, and I call this my Forrest Gump moment. So we eventually did catch that rabbit, but something changed for me that day. Like I said, I just really became fixated about being able to run. So from then on, running became a part of my life. I ran track in high school. I ran in the winter to cut weight for wrestling, and then I ran in the summer to stay in shape for sports during the school year. Pretty much all through high school and most of college, I kept it up. Even after graduation, I ran regularly up until I got married and had kids. Then, like a lot of new parents, I had a period where from the birth of my oldest daughter in 2002 to the birth of my youngest in 2006, where I did stop running. It's about a 4-year period, and I did get out of shape, and I had to relearn the joys of running. So having kids teaches you quickly that you're no longer the main character in your life. You have to make sacrifices, and you put your kids and your spouse ahead of yourself. I signed up for that, but with my wife's support, I made a pact no matter what. I would hold on to running, even if it meant I had to do it at 4 or 5 in the morning. Little did I know that those early morning runs would end up being a daily routine for the next 20 years. So I still remember coming back to run in 2006, barely making it up the street before stopping to catch a breath. Once I got going again, it came back pretty quickly. I found actually that I could hang pretty well in age group races, and it became something that we did as a family. Weekend races, fun runs for the kids, and cheering on people at the finish line. But like the rabbit situation at my house when I was younger, the novelty of race day for my family wore off, and it gradually became more just my thing. So at that point, I started to push the boundaries a little bit, and I was looking to sign up for bigger races. My thought at the time was they would come to the races if I signed up for big ones. So this brings me to the Stomp part of the story. In late winter 2011, I had the dumb idea to sign up for the Mount Washington road race. I didn't even remember how the race came onto my radar, but I do remember the excitement of getting picked in the lottery. The first thing to figure out when you get into the Mount Washington road race is how the hell do you get down from the summit? There was a message board dedicated to race information back then, so I posted a request for a ride, which was another little moment that set me on a path that I never expected. Probably got a few replies, but one email stood out. It was short and sweet. The person seemed nice enough, so we agreed to meet at the start and swap gear in exchange for a ride down the mountain. I think that we exchanged a few emails about training and gear, but otherwise, this was just some random person who I had to deal with for a ride back to my car. So on June 18th, 2011, under the tent at the base of Mount Washington, I handed off a pack full of food and clothes to someone I'd never met, not knowing that moment would change the course of my life. The man who took my backpack was Stomp. The weather was perfect that day, so we chatted at the start, and he was easy to spot at the finish. And together with Mrs. Stomp and our new friend Chesley, we drove down the auto road. We were still high on the adrenaline and the excitement of the accomplishment. Little did we know that in the very near future, we would be standing on top of pretty much every summit that we were gazing out in between exchanging stories of race day. Mrs. Stomp, always the voice of reason, was baffled that anyone would willingly run up the mountain. I don't know if she realized it then, but I think that day planted a seed for her too. A little moment that eventually got her seed to grow into a deep love for the mountains. So as we got out of the car that day, I had no idea if we'd ever talk again, but Stomp kept in touch. We reconnected the next year at the race. Then we kind of drifted apart again. And then in 2014, we unknowingly found ourselves pulled into the same world, the world of hiking in the White Mountains. The novelty of running and the frustrations of injuries due to running forced me to look for alternative options around that time. I'd started to get out for more hikes, even did some winter overnights with a couple of friends on Mount Adams, and I had a rough solo hike on Mount Lafayette. I would post a few pictures of my adventures on social media, and Stomp saw a post of mine on Facebook and reached out. Again, little moments. He'd been doing some winter hikes himself, and I never really asked him what got him started, but over the years, I think he was also trying to find something for himself, and he found it in hiking. That day, Stomp invited me to join him and Jimmy Chaga on a trip to Mount Isolation. I think this was maybe the fourth or fifth time that I'd ever met Stomp, but again, that hike was another one of those little moments. Going up Glen Boulder Trail, looking down into Pinkham Notch, Stomp's adventurous spirit on full display. It all just clicked. One hike turned into another and then another. And eventually, a couple years of hiking went by. And at some point, one of us threw out the crazy idea to start a podcast. Stomp by that time had also found a new passion, search and rescue. And while our paths diverged a little bit from hiking and what our preferences were for hiking, it also complemented us pretty well for a concept that we had for this podcast. It did take a few more years to actually do it, but it's been an incredible ride. Hitting record for the first time was yet another one of those unplanned turning points, a little moment that has snowballed into something way bigger than we could have ever imagined. Working with Stomp has been amazing. I think he'd agree. We've made a bunch of lifelong friendships through this show. We've been able to share our love of the White Mountains and tell stories that matter. So here's the takeaway. Little moments matter. Say hi to somebody on the trail. Join that buddy hike. And if you're feeling bold, ask someone to come along with you. You never know where it'll lead. Now, if you're wondering why I'm gushing all about Stomp right now, don't worry about him. He's fine. We talk or text nearly every single day, but I want to share a bit about where SLASR's headed. So we touched on this in a recent episode, but people have been asking for more details. So here's the scoop. Stomp's role in search and rescue has grown. We always knew that this might happen, and while we're prepared for it, I'll admit I wasn't totally ready, and I probably was in a bit of a denial over it for the last couple of weeks. But we've gotten over that, and we have a plan to keep moving forward. So Stomp will still be part of SLASR. He'll pop up on the main show and on So You Wanna episodes occasionally, but moving forward, those friends that we've made because of that little moment meeting at the Mount Washington Road Race, a small response to a message board post. Now we've got an army of friends that we'll have, that it will be a rotating cast of co-hosts. Nick Sidler from Pud's podcast will be joining us to help out a lot. So he'll probably be doing a lot of the co-hosting duties, but we're also relying on our extended SLASR family to help out. Lynn's already stepped up. Andy's here today, and I'm sure Dave will be back for more. Plus, we'll have some other surprise co-hosts that will be joining us through the rest of the year. I'll always love talking with Stomp, and I know that we'll have more episodes together. But in the meantime, I hope you'll welcome our new voices with open ears and hearts. We're not perfect, but we'll keep working hard to bring the best stories and conversations from the Whites. And to my friend Stomp, thank you for everything you've done and everything you're still going to do. You're the glue that holds the SLASR universe together, and for that, I am eternally grateful. And for the listeners, remember, one small, insignificant interaction can change everything for you. That's the power of a little moment. Okay, Andy. So a little heartwarming and touching there, I guess. Very touching.
That's a fitting tribute for an absolutely great guy, and those are the kind of stories that really they give life to the links and bonds people develop and why we do what we do. And that was, really touching to hear that.
Yeah. And I think it's like the point, we became friends through this, and, we've made all kinds of connections, and, hiking does tend to bring people together. It doesn't matter what your background is, what your views are in life. A lot of times I don't even know anybody's backgrounds or views when it comes to hiking. We just like to hike, and it doesn't matter. So, and I feel like that's rare nowadays. It's just an activity. Like, it doesn't matter what you do for work or what your background is or where you live. Like, if you're into hiking, let's just get on the trail and more about it. So I think put yourself out there a little bit. You never know. You could host your own podcast someday.
That's right. You never know where it's going to lead. And There's a lot of divisiveness out there, but the bond of the wild and being out on the trail. I mean, that's something that brings people together in a way that I think gets lost a lot. And I think people should always pay attention to these opportunities to connect over wilderness.
Right. So, so I think that that's the update on Stomp, and if anybody wants to reach out to him, he's still monitoring the Instagram and stuff, and like I said, he'll be around. So, and
he'll be back. We know he'll be back.
Oh yeah, he'll be back. So, let me ask you a question. If you let's pretend that you got stuck in the rail car, and for whatever reason you had 10 people that you were working with on the Cog, and you guys got stuck and you couldn't get down, and there was no rescue. Would you or would you not resort to cannibalism if you needed to?
Ooh, all right. So this, as messed up as this is going to sound, cannibalism is something I've given thought to before, because it's that funny question, because I'm vegan, and some people know that about me.
Yeah.
So I don't eat meat, but I've talked about, sort of in an absurdist sense, would I indulge in cannibalism if the survival mechanism came to be that was necessary? And I honestly think I would. I mean, not that I am doing it in a brash, savage, uncaring way or a sociopathic way, but as far as if the situation presented itself, yeah, I think I would. Not lightly and not without a lot of contemplation as a last resort, but yeah, I think that option would definitely be open in the most trying of circumstances.
Yeah. So we talked a little bit about cannibalism last episode. So listener Tyler McFarland had sent us in an interesting story about Boone Island in Maine. So there's a lighthouse there, and there's a story of the Nottingham Galley, which was a shipwreck in 1710. It's a British merchant ship, and it was captained by a gentleman by the name of John Dean, and they 14 crewmen aboard survived the initial wreck, although 2 initially died. The cook died a few days after the initial wreck, and then a carpenter died a couple of weeks later, and then 2 others drowned attempting to reach the mainland on an improvised raft. So the remaining 10 crewmen managed to stay alive despite winter. Imagine that, stuck on a rock in Maine. You can see the mainland, but you can't get there. And you've got no food, no fire. So they were there for 24 days until they were rescued, and they had to resort to cannibalism. They didn't eat the cook. They ate the carpenter. Which is interesting. I would have probably ate the cook, but there is a book that is.
Would you think the cook would be more nutritious because they're skilled and adept in cooking, so probably what they're eating is better? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure, but there is a book called Boone Island, A True Story of Mutiny, Shipwreck, and Cannibalism, that was written in 2012. So I'll link this in the show notes if people want to check it out. But it's an interesting story, and I never knew about this. So it's Boone Island in Maine, and it looks like a pretty small island. It's got a lighthouse, pretty big farm attached to it, and definitely worth checking out.
Yeah, I only knew about it prior because of the lighthouse, because I'm a bit of a lighthouse freak. But the story was something I wasn't familiar with till just recently here. And any story like this that involves the psychology of being stranded and being in a situation like this interests me, and psychologically what people have to go through to get themselves out of that and to keep themselves going. That must have been inconceivable what that might have been like.
Right, yeah. And you said you're 240 right at the beginning of the show, so yeah. I think that you would probably be first on the dinner plate for me.
Yeah, I got meat on the hook, so I think I'd go pretty quick, and I wouldn't be able to fight it at that point either. So I wouldn't. All my muscle would do me no good at that point.
Yeah, exactly. Well, thanks for sending that in, Tyler. And I'll link the stuff about Boone Island in the show notes. That's a pretty cool story. So. So I got a couple of things here that we want to. Actually, I got a pretty long list of New Hampshire things to cover here, Andy, and then we'll get into Katahdin and Baxter State Park here. So the first story I have here is the Stomps. Mr. and Mrs. Stomp visited the White Mountains Visitor Center in North Woodstock. So this is on exit 32 on Route 93, and they're giving it 2 thumbs up. It's got cool swag, trinkets, history, and more. So I've never been to the White Mountains Visitor Center, but I've been to a couple of kiosks. Like there's one in North Conway and there's one in Lincoln where they've got a bunch of items and stickers and maps and information, but I've never been to the actual visitor center. I don't know, have you been here on the Exit 32?
No, I've I'm guilty often of the fact that because I live here, I sometimes am woefully unaware of some of these things that seemingly cater to tourists. But if you do take that time to go in, like they're 2 thumbs up. I mean, and they've got little things for sale and history. That's the kind of stuff that we often ignore because it's right here and maybe it's not catered to a local, but it's neat if you can kind of get yourself out of that mindset and go check it out. But no, I haven't been there.
Right. So I'll link this in the show notes as well. And if people want to check it out, it's kind of touristy, but if it's a kind of off season, midweek or something, you want to swing by, check out the White Mountain Visitor Center in North Woodstock. All right, Andy, this next one is kind of big news, but it's flying under the radar. Maybe you've heard this. I didn't know this. Stomp actually sent this over to me this week, but the Appalachian Trail is being rerouted from Pinkham Notch. So essentially what's going on is that the suspension bridge over the West Peabody branch of the river, which I kind of knew this, it's shut off. So I don't know what the setup is. You've been out in the Great Gulf, I feel like, Reese. I feel like you might have said something about being out there.
I think it was a couple years ago now. It's 2 years ago this coming season, I guess is when I was last in Great Gulf. Yeah.
All right. So it wasn't recently, but apparently this suspension bridge, I think this is the second one over. So it's the one that connects you from Osgood Cutoff to Madison Gulf. There's a suspension bridge there. That's shut down. So you cannot access that. I don't know what they have set up there, if they just have it like roped off or what the deal is, but they said it's not safe. So you definitely don't want to play around with that. So essentially what they're doing is rerouting the official route for the Appalachian Trail, and they're sending people down the Great Gulf Trail out to 16 and then telling you to walk up 16, connect to 19 Mile, and then out to Carter Hut. So they're bypassing all of Madison Gulf Trail, all of Old Jackson, and then all of Wildcat Ridge.
Right. Yeah, that's taking out a significant chunk, including isn't it the steepest mile on the AT with the Wildcat Ridge there?
Yeah. So it's surprising. So I don't know what the mileage is. It's probably, it's probably an 8 mile section that they're knocking out, and it's like a highlight of the overall hike. So this is going to impact day hikers and weekend overnights and stuff like that too, because essentially if you want to get into the Great Gulf now, your option is essentially to get in from Pinkham Notch. You got to go Old Jackson to Madison Gulf, and then you can get into the Great Gulf and Six Husbands and all Chandler Brook and all that area there, the Sphinx. Yep. If you need to go up Osgood, then your only option is to go Great Gulf. You can risk a water crossing there. I just don't know how. My sense is that even in low flood conditions, like that section of the river runs pretty good. But the news report said that there is a water crossing that's flagged a little ways down to the left of the suspension bridge, but it's kind of like take your chances. If it's rained out or something, you might not be able to get through.
Yeah, it's definitely, that area is a full ford of the river. Like you're going to be boots off up to your, at least thighs, if not waist, depending on the flow and the water level. And it's doable sometimes, but it's, hopefully no one tries to test it when with high water.
Yeah. And I usually only, I check the river gauges quite a bit, but I usually only check the PEMI, and then that gives me an assumption of what it's going to be like pretty much all over the place. But it may be worthwhile now, if you're going to be in that area, to just check the river gauge on the west branch of the Peabody now. I don't know what the numbers are. I got to look it up again, but I think typically if it's under 200 or something on the PEMI, you're good. I don't know what the number guidance is. I'll do a little bit of research and try to figure that out. If anybody knows, just hit me up over the Instagram. But it's just something to factor in if you're going to be in that area, that you don't assume that you can get across the river that easily. Yeah,
and I don't know if you know, but one of the questions that came to my mind when I heard about this is this sort of an interim process, and eventually there'll be a a new bridge put in, or is this more of a long-term deviation from the route?
I don't know. I mean, I would assume that they're going to need to put this into the project pipeline. And based on what I see for the project pipeline in the Forest Service, I think just last week, the decision was finally made on the Lincoln Woods reroute. And that's been in the pipeline for like 3 years.
A while, yeah.
So who knows how long it's going to take, and who knows what the scale of the project is. If it's only fixing the cables and you don't have to get involved in any environmental impact, then maybe it's not that big of a deal. But if they got to take the whole thing down, they probably have to do a complete environmental impact study, talk about like, all right, if we've got to cut trees down or something, then it becomes a whole thing, I think.
Yeah, that's an involved process, and then securing funding and scope of project. It's not a quick turnaround by any means.
Yeah, so we'll see. But I think that if you're gonna risk crossing it, just do it in a period over the summer where it hasn't rained for like 3 or 4 days, and take a look at the gauge. We will get the numbers on like what's a reasonable. I'll get out there at some point and try to get a lay of the land, and then give more details. Or if we have anybody that's out there, if they can get a sense of it. I just can't remember how dicey it is crossing that section. I got to look back at pictures.
Last time I was in there was to do. So I amend that. I was there last year to do Madison Gulf, and I remember that I would not have wanted to cross the river and I was a little bit shoulder season on that. I believe I was early May, trying to get up as one of the earlier ascents of Madison Gulf in non-full winter conditions. And I wouldn't have wanted to go across the river by any means when I was in there doing that.
Okay. Awesome. Well, Appalachian Trail reroute. So we'll keep an eye on it, and we'll update when we find out more. All right. Next up, Andy, the ice out. Do you know what the ice out is?
I do. And I try to take a stab, for at least for the last few years of nailing when it's going to be. And I'm always wrong. Just never even, I can get within a week maybe, but I can never nail that thing.
Yeah. So the ice out, for people that aren't familiar with this is when Lake Winnipesaukee declares that the ice is clear enough for the Mount Washington, is that the name of the ship? Yeah, the MS Mount Washington can get through all 5 sections of the Winnipesaukee.
Yeah, so people often misunderstand. It doesn't mean that all traces of ice have disappeared, but is it navigable / passable for the ship, essentially, is their metric for measurement, I guess. Right.
So, and matter of fact, when I was on the Ossipes a couple of weeks ago, I looked down at the lakes region, and it was fully iced over, and I was surprised. But last year, I think it iced out in early March or mid-March, but this year much later. So it actually happened. We had it in the script, and we were like, put in your prediction, but it ended up icing out at 7:02 yesterday. So we're recording this on the April 17th. So it's now April 16th. So it was 7:02 a.m. And there's a website that we'll link that will give you a chance to put in for it. So you put in for it, but you've never guessed correctly.
No, and it looks like this year's winner really got pretty close within a few hours.
Yeah, it's not bad. So Rusty Round Island got it at 10:36. So anyway, so that's a fun little New Hampshire thing here. All right, Andy, next up here is, have you ever done any acting? Have you ever done any high school plays or community theater or anything like that?
Sadly, well, I guess not sadly, but yes, I kind of crossed all kinds of definitions and cliques in high school, because I was on varsity sports, but I also was in drama club. So I definitely did some theater. I've never done any movie acting, but I've been on the stage before, and it's been a while, but I've dabbled in that a little bit.
All right. Well, this may be your big moment. So I've often talked about how I have some concepts around Hallmark movies based in New Hampshire and Waterville Valley. And now there's a movie that is going to be based on hiking that's going to be filmed in New Hampshire, and they're actually looking for actors. So matter of fact, I'm going to reach out to the producer of this, see if I can get her on the show. I may even drop your name and see if I can get you an audition, Andy.
Yeah, put a little in for me, because I might be a little rusty, but if it's in my wheelhouse, like if they can typecast me in the hiker role, I think I can nail it.
Right. Yeah, you can be like a crusty through hiker. So you have to grow a beard, though.
Yeah, it'll be method acting. I'll definitely have to get the right scent going and not shower for a while and really, embrace the role.
Yes, exactly. So, but anyway, so there's an article in the New Hampshire Union Leader, and the movie is called Only You, and it's a father-daughter hiking drama that is written and conceived by Erica Lynn Jolie. And I'll talk about Erica in a minute because she is one of us, Andy. She's a real hiker.
Yeah, she's legit.
Yeah, she's legit. I was reading about this. So the concept is a young father and his estranged daughter mend their broken relationship while hiking the Appalachian Trail. They meet a diverse cast of supporting characters along the way and form a trail family of sorts. So the movie is looking for New England actors as it'll be filmed between June 13th and July 6th in Lincoln, New Hampshire. This is huge. So except for a few main roles, all the cast and crew must be able to get themselves to the set. So they're looking for local hires who can reasonably commute to, this is all you, Andy, commute to Lincoln for multiple days. Housing and transportation can be provided if necessary. The rate of pay is listed as $150 a day, which would be about $1,200 for 8 days of work. So you can even get paid here. So
yeah, there's a lot of unpaid extra work, and this is actually paid, so that's not so bad.
Right, yeah. And there's been a couple of these. There was this movie on Netflix. I think it was like last year, and it was about this girl who decided to go through hiking, and it was like a class to learn how to go through hiking, but they actually did like the whole trail, and they had like a guide or something, and she ended up meeting a guy, or it was like a Hallmark movie, but it was on Netflix. But I don't think they ever really do a good job of showing the trail. Like they basically spent the entire movie in like this meadow, and it looked nothing like the Appalachian Trail. So I'm happy that they're doing it in New Hampshire. Right.
At least it's going to give some real world credence to the trail conditions. And yeah, that's my biggest gripe too is, movies like Infinite Storm. It's like, this is great and all, but it's not set here. And it's painfully obvious, when that's the case.
Yeah. I'm still waiting for that movie where the movie about the caretaker at the Harvard cabin, like that. And again, that's a documentary, so it's a little bit different, but like the tone and the cinematography that they were able to use in that film, just like it screamed, like it just felt like that's the White Mountains, that's New Hampshire, that's everything. So if they can capture that in a movie, that'd be super cool. And there's a little bit more detail it's on the Indiegogo site, which is the site where I think independent filmmakers can put information about their movies, and they can you can donate if you want to help with the production. So
right.
A little bit more detail. This movie is a coming of age drama about a young woman confronting her grief and her alcoholic father as she embarks on a 2,185-mile hike along the Appalachian Trail 3 years after her mother's death. So a little bit more information. I don't want to give away too many spoilers, but a little bit more about Erica Lynn Jolie, because I was skeptical whenever I hear about a movie. I'm like, are they really going to do... Erica is a legit hiker, so I'll shout out her resume in a minute, but she's the writer and director, and she says on the Indiegogo site, thank you so much for your interest in our film and joining our team. She's been working on this project for 4 years, and she's excited to finally get the script to screen. She first thought of the concept when she finished a 5-day hiking trip with her dad in the White Mountains back in 2020. She climbed her first mountain at age 4, and she's hiked all across the east coast of the U.S., including the 48 4,000 footers. She did a 26-day trek on the John Muir Trail with her dad, and then she's hoping to do the entire Appalachian Trail with her dad as well. So she decided to write a film about it. And she says there's just something about being in the woods far away from the chaotic and high-pressured environment of the real world. When you step on the trail, you leave everything else behind, and hiking is a bonding experience like no other. So she says this movie was a perfect place for her main characters to rediscover themselves and heal their broken relationship. So she sounds like she's really sincere. She's got a good hiking background, so I'm rooting for her.
Me too. I think this is going to be a really salient piece because she lives this. It's not something that she's dabbling in or she's, masquerading in. This is a life that she knows. And the fact that she's going to be embarking on the AT to basically live the story that she's writing, and her hiking resume is solid as it is, she's going to give an attention to this story that I think it's going to be something that I'm really looking forward to seeing when it comes out, and it'll really touch on those points she's making about it being a retreat from a lot of the high paced life that we're kind of trapped within. And this is going to be a good one. I'm going to keep an eye on this for sure.
Yeah, I'm excited about it. And then, like I said, I am going to reach out to her, see if she want to come on to talk a little bit more about it. I think right now they are trying to raise a little bit of money. I think they probably have backers, but she had talked about, like, if she can raise $100,000, she can do a couple days. If they get $150,000, they can get a little bit more professional crew. $200,000, they can promote the film. So, we'll see what happens here, but it sounds exciting. So, a chance for a real hiker to actually highlight the Appalachian Trail for once. So
yeah,
good stuff.
I'm excited about that.
All right. So moving on to our next story, Andy. So we had a recent rescue on Mount Cardigan. So you ever get on Cardigan?
Oh yeah. That's one of my more recent favorites, much like a Stomp. I love the Holt Trail, and it's probably in my top 5 hikes. I have a special place for Cardigan for sure.
Yeah, I got to get back out there. I did the like the fire screw to I didn't come down the whole trail, but whatever that other trail is that reconnects to the whole trail at the bottom. Like, I just started at that AMC center, but it was awesome. You're above tree line. It's so very much like Monadnock. I feel like you're above tree line a long time. Awesome views, awesome ledges, tons of little like nooks and crannies to sit down with open ledge views. It's awesome.
Yeah, this for a mountain that's only a little over 3,000 feet. You get a lot of time above tree line. The ledges are great. I mean, people say that Holt is like a mini Huntington, and I know what they're going for. It's not quite, but it has some challenges to it, and the pitch of those slopes is something that it gives you some good experience on ledges and some pretty good exposure. So if you're trying to see if would I like Huntington, go do the Holt Trail, because it'll give you an idea for sure. Right.
That's a good segue into our story from New Hampshire Fish and Game. So check it out. Check out the Holt Trail, and if you survive that, you'll be okay.
Then just go right to Huntington.
Just go right to Huntington now. So not now. Just wait until mid-June.
Yeah, wait till it dries out. Exactly.
So on Tuesday, April 15th, 6:55 p.m. conservation. You're going to hear a lot of this one is one of those ones where it's like, check the list of all the bad choices that you can make. But 6:55 p.m. conservation officers notified 2 hikers who felt stuck near the summit of Mount Cardigan. Neither hiker had any injuries, but they felt unsafe to move as the trail was steep and icy. Again, it's another one of those scenarios like we were talking about where, it's thin ice. So even if you have spikes, you might not necessarily be okay in those situations, but they felt like they couldn't proceed up or down safely, so they called for assistance. Turns out it was 2 20-year-old hikers. One out of Hanover, I think, is a Dartmouth student, and then a friend from Los Angeles, so probably not as familiar with the area as they should be. They had started hiking up the West Ridge Trail. I don't know where. Is that the one that takes you to Fire Screw and around, or is that to the left?
I believe so I'm trying to remember, because I have gone down Fire Screw, gone down Manning, Clark, West Ridge. Yeah, I believe that's over on the other side there by Fire Screw.
Okay, yeah. So they started up West Ridge, and then they started around 4:30. So that's one thing, is it's a little bit late in the day. You don't have much. I mean, I think the sun sets at 7. And then, while descending the South Ridge Trail, they ran into snow and ice that they couldn't maneuver around. So they didn't have any microspikes. They didn't have any food. They didn't have any extra clothing. They didn't have headlamps. So they were out doing their thing. But, we've got another article we're going to follow up on this to talk just a little bit about, like, sometimes young people, they just don't know. They don't know what they don't know. So, if they had brought those things, it's likely that assistance would not have been needed. But essentially, conservation officers reached the pier around 9 o'clock. They provided clothing, warm fluid, and microspikes, and then the group made it down to the trailhead in about an hour, so 10 o'clock without incident. So Fish and Game does indicate that they are going to bill for this incident. So,
right.
And then the write-up says, technically it's spring and warmer weather's approaching, but it's imperative that you prepare yourself for the outdoors with recent and snowfall in the mountains. The next few weeks will still have winter conditions. So think about having proper footwear for the activity that you're engaging in, a headlamp, and proper clothing and layers. So yeah, you got to keep bringing your spikes with you. And just a little follow-up. Listener Jennifer, shout out to Jennifer. So Jennifer actually messaged, so she came upon both of them at the summit at the time, and she's like, look, I got my headlamp. If you guys need help, I'm happy to like hike down with you. And they declined. They said at this point that they like didn't feel safe. And I honestly, probably the right call for them. If they didn't feel safe, and Jennifer is one person, there's two of them. If something goes sideways, it could have been a worse situation. So it was actually probably a better call for them to sit tight, let the professional crew get there. But shout out to Jennifer, because she had her headlamp. She's prepared to go, to help them out. And, just gives a little bit of perspective that they weren't completely by themselves. So people were checking on them, but you get up there and it can be sketchy up there. So they probably made the right choice to wait. They're going to get billed for this one, but it'll be a lesson learned for them.
Yeah, and hopefully a broad lesson too. With shoulder season hiking, we get excited. The warm weather comes, the snow starts to recede out of at least the trailheads, and you think that the ice is on the retreat, and you get these flows because of the freeze and thaw. And as they run over rocks, like we were talking about, that thin ice that doesn't present much of a bite, and if you don't have spikes at all, I mean, you will get, especially if your down route is different than your up route. At least on your up route, if you're planning on doing an out and back, you can assess it and be like, will I want to come down this? And if not, I can turn around. You have a different down route. You don't know what's going on. So you need to be prepared. You need to go out with, just like in the 80Ks when they make you carry snowshoes within certain seasons, you're in the whites or, hiking in New Hampshire, really anywhere in New England, carry those spikes, at least a pair of rock spikes well through, April and even into May, depending on what kind of year we're having.
Right, yeah, and everybody says rock spike. Andy, I can't tell which one of my micro spikes is a rock spike and which one is the brand new one after like two hikes. I'm always looking at them like, is this a rock spike or is this a nice spike? I can't tell.
Right, and to the point I've gotten to now where my Katulas are rock spikes and my Hill Sound trail crampons are my quote unquote good spikes. So
that's a good call.
So I've got that system going, but yeah, I've got a couple pairs of Katulas, and I can't tell which is which in terms of if I would call one rock versus one not at this point.
No, that's a good call actually. I guess I probably could get like a green pair of Katulas and then a black pair of Katulas and use them that way. But anyway, but it's interesting. So Andy had sent over a separate article in preparation for this episode, and it actually ties into this. So this was a case of two 20-year-olds, and smart. She goes to Dartmouth. She's definitely a smart person, but young people, we see this quite a bit. Like I've seen a couple of cases. There was a group out of MIT, I think, that got in trouble on the Bowles Trail on Chicora at one point. There was another group from Cambridge at one of the graduate students that got in trouble on the Rainbow Trail up the backside of the Carters there. And you do see this, like really smart young people that think that they're ready to go and they get out in these adventures and they need a rescue. So it's and then I also see in the metrics that I pull, there's this like, it's a dip when you look at the volume. It's like very heavy in the 20 to 25 year range, and then very heavy in like the older 70 plus range. And then it sort of dips down a little bit in the age ranges. And I think that part of it is that young people don't have they just don't have the knowledge, but they have a little bit more confidence. And then you've got the older people that might have the knowledge, but they overestimate their physical capabilities, or they just have less room for, if an injury happens, it's more catastrophic for them. So you pulled this interesting article out of the United Kingdom that provides metrics on rescue numbers. So this is an article in The Guardian. Why don't you talk a little bit about, like, if you want to give an overview on this one, Andy, and then we can get into the metrics a bit.
Sure. So basically an article talking about how social media and sort of an over-reliance on, map apps, so things like All Trails, for example, are being linked to an increase in rescue calls, and particularly in that age range of 18 to 24-year-olds. Because like you said, they don't have the same experience necessarily all the time, and they've got this invincibility factor sometimes. I mean, I was there, I lived this, where you're in that age and you think that you can take on anything, and anything that comes up you can adapt, and you've got the ability to overcome, and that's not always the case. And I think one of the things this article hits on is not just that reliance and that false confidence that grows out of everyone being able to download a map app on their phone, but also social media kind of glorifying trips into areas that can be technical, and people want to say that they've been there. They want to get that picture. They want to get those accolades. And, I don't think we have as much of that here in the Whites. I mean, we've got some spots. We've got Huntington. We've got, Bond Cliff and places where people want to take that shot. But I think there's less like ego-driven hiking here than there is in some other places, maybe out west and maybe over in the UK. But that age demographic, I think, is really telling. Is, when we get into the data that this article talks about, just how much percentage of these rescues is skewing into that age range. And, it breaks it down, and you can just see how disparate the call outs are in that particular age range of, like college age kids.
Yeah. The article, it's noteworthy. So the article covers rescue data across England and Wales, and it breaks down a comparison from where they were in 2019 to 2024. And in 2024, they hit a milestone where they had a search and rescue call out every single day of the year. And the volume of rescues that they have is significant. I would say you're talking about 3,000 to 4,000 rescues, maybe a little bit less than that, maybe about 3,000 rescues over the course of a year. So the volume compared to New Hampshire is much higher. But the actual, when you look at the age range group, if I put an overlay on the metrics that I pull for the media reported incidents against what we're seeing in this data for the UK, it's pretty similar. The biggest change demographically from 2019 to 2024 is the 18 to 24-year-old age group almost doubled in the number of rescues, went from 166 call-outs to 314. And then when you look across the remaining age groups, the only other age group category that really stands out for having a significant increase is 75 to 79 years old. Everybody else is within, 10% of the prior 5-year total. So I think that there's something to it. And like you said, the article calls out these honeypot spots that they say are really popular over social media, and what they're finding is that young people are seeing these spots posted on social media and then using map apps instead of paper apps, and not taking the time to really learn the skills that need to be learned in order to stay safe. And then they just do a rescue call. So that's why the hiking buddies have done a really good job trying to reach out to young people. And I think if you're a hiker and you've got a young person in your life, I try to mentor my nephews, and if anybody has friends with kids that want to get into hiking, I'm always open to trying to share the knowledge. So definitely don't be shy about trying to educate people in a way that, try to manage it in a way where you're not being a jerk about it. But if you can reach out and spread some knowledge, I think it's a good thing to do.
Absolutely. And I think just always a cautionary tale about technology. While it's a great tool that we utilize, and it gives us a lot of abilities that maybe we didn't have before, puts things in reach and in access, that cautionary tale is an over-reliance upon it will dull skills in other areas and make someone ill-equipped to be adaptable when that fails, because it will fail. Always plan for that piece of technology to fail. And some of that, kind of confirmation bias and false confidence you get from being able to just quickly consume something like downloading a trail app map doesn't bring with it the same kind of experience and skill set that learning compass and map and nav skills is going to get you. So don't take the shortcuts. Use the tools, but don't think that they're the end all be all.
Right. So, all right. So that was interesting. Thanks for pulling that, Andy, and I will put that out in the show notes so people can check that out. And I'm going to add that as a footnote on my my data presentation as well. That's good comparison data. Next up is mountain forecast. So I don't know, Andy, if you use that or not. I know you probably are constantly using higher summits, but mountain forecast, I actually like to use it if I'm planning out, like I'll check it out on like a Monday, Tuesday, primarily just to get a sense on like, all right, how is the weekend trending, or is it even viable? And then I'll take a look at it again on like a Wednesday to see if does it still look good? People knock it a little bit and say it's not as accurate, but for me, it's like, it's a long range outlook for me, so that I can say like, all right, well, this weekend's at least viable based on what I'm seeing. And then I'll dial it in with the Higher Summits forecast and NOAA and a couple of other sources. So
Right.
I do use it. I don't know if you look at it or not.
Occasionally, yeah, like kind of what you're saying. I'll use it as a tool, especially in a longer range, because you don't have that ability with the Higher Summits forecast. So you can kind of get a rough idea. But I do find it, like, I'll actually laugh at it sometimes when I'm looking at it in a short range forecast, because we know sort of the factors that are in play in the microclimates that we're dealing with here in the Whites. And sometimes it's woefully inaccurate, but I think as a loose model and as a guide and as a piece of your forecast puzzle, it definitely has a purpose.
Yeah, exactly. And there's a bunch of tools like Joe Lentini. I was watching this a presentation from him, and he talks about like using the text messaging for the Higher Summits forecast and White Mountain forecast, so you can get a lot of info through that. But I wanted to just bring up Mountain Forecast just because it's moving to a pay model. So, and I think it's always had some aspect of a pay model, but I think some of the features of the longer term outlooks are going to be moving to a pay model. So just be prepared for that if you use that. And because of this, I think obviously Higher Summits forecast is the primary, but I'm also going to put a couple of links in the show notes. So Philip Warner, Section Hiker. I don't know, do you go on that site at all?
I have poked around on it. Yeah, it's a good kind of landing page where it compiles, so if you're looking for, a place to jump off from for all these different resources, it's a great place to start that from. So you can compile a multitude of tools rather than just, one forecast.
Right. So he actually has a really good page on White Mountain 4,000 foot of weather forecast. So he links NOAA and Mountain Forecast and New England trail conditions and the observatory, the avalanche forecast, and then the water dashboard gauge readings. And then he's got local NOAA forecasting for all of the 4,000 footers, so you can check that out. And then I'll also link in the show notes the Trail New Hampshire forecast, which is our friend Kimball Rexford. He was on episode 154, and he's got a really good aggregated forecast page on Trails New Hampshire.
Yeah, that episode opened my eyes. I'd always kind of known about that page, but I've really looked at that more since tuning into that episode. That's a great resource.
Yeah, Kimball does a great job there. So anyway, Mountain Forecast going to a pay model. So throw that in the trash if you don't want to use it, and then we got a bunch of better options for you if you need it. So, all right, and now my last article here. We're going to skip pop culture and a couple of other things just because we're running long here, but I did want to include this one because I put it in the show intro. So there's rumors of a serial killer. So have you ever met a serial killer or someone you thought might be a serial killer, Andy?
I think I've had thoughts before. There's always that thing that goes through your head is this person socially awkward, or is there more to this? And right. I think that's something that everyone feels at some point dealing with certain people. Well,
I feel like train yards are a place where you would generally find a serial killer.
Yeah, I think that was a common, like in sort of the hobo days of people being transient and hopping trains. I think that was, because unfortunately serial killers often target folks that are of a demographic where maybe, no one's going to realize they're missing. They're of a lower socioeconomic class or status. So that has lent itself to being things that happen in rail yards and sort of disconnected places where people they're not on the map, so to speak. So when they disappear, who might know, or how quickly will someone know?
Right. Yeah. There was I remember when I was in North Adams, there was a serial killer. I forget the guy's name, but he was arrested around the time I was in North Adams, and he was like a pretty prolific serial killer. I think he killed like 4 or 5 young girls. I forget his name, but that was a big deal. But I feel like serial killing is more difficult now. Like everyone has cameras. with the DNA technology and their ability to take like a small piece of DNA and then use genealogy to zero in on someone. I feel like a lot of the serial killers have sort of like, maybe they moved on to something else. I don't know what else they moved on to, but I feel like it's not as easy to be as it's a tough world for serial killers nowadays. It seems like. Yeah,
it's hard out there. You can't fly beneath that radar. I mean, the dragnet of being able to track movements and patterns. I mean, it's hard to sort of stay beneath that at this point. Yeah,
like the good old days, like Ted Bundy would kill a few people, he'd get arrested, he'd break out of jail, kill a few more. Like, the 70s, it was a good time for the serial killers. But anyway,
that was the heyday.
That was the heyday. But so the reason I bring this up is that there's an article and there's a bunch of rumors going around. So fears are mounting that I don't believe this for a sec, by the way. I'm going to give away the headline right now. So fears are mounting that a serial killer is stalking quaint New England towns after the remains of 3 women were found in the span of 6 weeks. So residents across Connecticut, Massachusetts, and Rhode Island are on high alert following these discoveries. So I guess there was on March 6th, there was the remains of a 35-year-old woman from West Islip, New York, that was found in New Haven, and she was found in the Norwalk River after a heavy rain. And then on March 21st, police found another set of human remains of a 59-year-old mother. And in Rhode Island, police found another set of remains in a wooded area of Foster, Rhode Island, which was later identified as a 56-year-old woman. So several other sets of unidentified remains have also been located in New England towns during a similar period. And police are saying there's no information at this time suggesting any connection. And when you look at the locations here, it goes all the way down to southwest Connecticut, right at the New York border, up to, there's 4 in Connecticut, 1 in Rhode Island, and then looks like 1 on April 10th in, somewhere around looks like Needham or something like that. So yeah. I don't know, 1 person found in the water. I don't know what, it seems like they're very loosely connected. Similar demographic like you talked about, like maybe lower socioeconomic, maybe single moms, things like that. So we'll keep an eye on it. But I think if you're in that area, just be on the lookout for serial killers. That's the advice I tell you. Like, just look out. Don't go near bodies of water. Don't go out late by yourself. And if you're going to go to the gas station or the ATM or something, like if you're just go with other people and just keep your head on a swivel.
Strength in numbers, protect yourself. But sometimes things like this, they wind up being like a stab, could it be a serial killer? Are these connected? But unfortunately, drawing that link while it drums up attention doesn't seem like at this point that it's routed in anything concrete, just the fact that there's loose similarity.
Yeah, exactly. So
we all know that hiking a mountain can be hard at times. So here's a corny dad joke to help you get over it. But
Are you a fan of the dad joke section of the episodes? Do you like those, the dad jokes?
Oh, I do. Yeah. Any jokes I ever tell in my life, and I tried one the other day that flew like a lead balloon. But I'm a dad joke kind of guy.
Okay, all right. He's an actor. He's a dad joke kind of guy. All right. So I'll start with why do bananas have to put on sunscreen before they go to the beach?
Ooh,
because they might peel.
Yeah, see, I didn't want to ruin that punchline.
Yeah, you knew it. So yeah, so thanks to, I get my dad jokes from my friend Julie got me a dad jokes mug, and I can get information online, the dad joke of the day, and then I also have my friend Camilla and my friends Camilla and Lance got me a book. So thank you very much for my endless, unlimited reservoir of dad jokes.
Yeah, Patrick from the summit with the state is a big dad joke kind of guy. So, if we're ever lacking, we can tap his resource for sure.
All right. I may have to message him to get some ideas. So, all right. So 48 peaks. So use your passion for hiking to help end Alzheimer's. Join 400 plus hikers as they climb New Hampshire's 4,000 footers or create their own challenge to support the mission of the Alzheimer's Association. The annual hiker celebration will take place Saturday, June 21st at Tuckerman Brewing with raffles, food, and an amazing community. Hike that weekend or any day that you want this summer. No fundraising minimums required, but those who raise $100 will receive the 2025 Performance Grade Purple T-shirt. Let's turn the White Mountains purple to end Alzheimer's. Visit alz.org/48peaks to learn more. And if you're interested in joining the SLASR 48 Peaks Alzheimer's team, we've got Nobby Hikes as my co-captain, and there's a link in the show notes, and you can sign up and join the team. So I think we've got, trying to think and see how many people we've got on the team right now. So we got 4 members of the team, and then I think I've got like my daughter and her boyfriend, and then Nobby's got his son too. So we'll get them added. But yeah, join the team. And Andy, if you want to join up, you can take the cat with you if you want. We're gonna hike Mount Madison. That's the summit we picked.
Nice. Do you have a route picked out yet, or is it TBA?
To be determined. I think I'm always of the mind of going up airline if the weather's nice. But Nobby was thinking about maybe going, I forget what that trail is, when you go up Valley Way, and then before you get to that Bruin split, there's another split to the left, which I think that trail begins with a B too. And you can go up that way and kind of connect with Watson Path or what. I don't know. Right. I don't know what that trail is, but I was kind of like, why would you do that? Let's go up airline.
Yeah, the airline, that's the tried and true way to go.
yeah, that's my opinion. So, all right. So yeah, but sign up for the 48 Peaks. Andy, if you want to join us, let us know. If not, just give us a honk on the Cog Railway as we're going up.
Oh, absolutely. And I'd love to join. I'm going to look into that. And it's something I've been meaning to participate in and looked at for the last couple of years. I'd love to get involved. Awesome.
Yeah, let me know. All right, so listeners, get your free stickers at Ski Fanatics or Spinners Pizza Pala in Andover. All right, and then you can also get SLASR swag on our bonfire shop. So choose between our super popular hoodies, classic or V-neck tees, and more. So the color selection is great, and they are priced to move. So help spread the word about SLASR and represent today. Coffees, if you want to show some support for the pod. We got to get Andy a microphone, people. Give us some coffees here. So you can donate to help pay for web hosting, equipment, and live events. So just want to give a shout out to our friend Alex M. Alex got 4 coffees this week, and he writes, "So I want to support my favorite podcast." So thanks, Alex. And we've got a whole bunch of So You Wanna episodes in the can right now. We're going to start releasing them. And we've done the Wildcats, we've done Cannon. I think Stomp's got a couple of episodes, so it'll be good times. So we'll get those out pretty soon, and those will start flowing pretty fast. Andy, are you drinking anything tonight?
I am. I've got an offbeat one, but it's called Sack Lunch. This is a mouthful. Blueberry Fluffernutter Sour, and it's by Branch Blade. Sorry. And it's pretty colorful. It's tasty, and I'm a sour kind of guy, so it does it for me. It's a good one.
Awesome. Well, I have a little fancy drink here as well. I am drinking a guava tequila coconut rum spritzer.
Ooh.
So my wife is hosting her ladies book club upstairs, and we had to do like a strawberry salad and then a weird drink here. So yeah,
that actually sounds refreshing.
Yeah, it's pretty good. I feel like I'm on an island breeze here. So if you hear the ice cubes rattling, that's what's going on.
It's good for the it's going to help usher in spring, maybe.
Yes, exactly. All right. Any recent hikes, Andy? Have you been out anywhere?
Yeah, semi-recent. I've been real busy lately, but a couple weeks ago I got out on Sunapee in a new way that I hadn't done before, going up Newbury and going past the White Cliff overlook and then Lake Solitude there, which was just beautiful. Mix of trail conditions and some of that sketchy, flow ice that you get this time of year, but just a beautiful vantage point on Lake Solitude there and a way up Sunapee I hadn't done. That it was a good quick one to really get out there and break my kind of funk that I'd been in after coming down, and I hadn't really done much since doing Katahdin. So it was a great day. Beautiful view from there.
Awesome. Yeah. So you're a little bit more around Western New Hampshire. So like staying low and a little bit south, you avoid like the crazy conditions. So kind of like what we do with the Belknaps and Ossabees, I would assume.
Yeah. I was looking for something, that time frame where I was hiking, everything up here was pretty disagreeable to me conditions wise. So I was like, all right, if I go down, that way a little bit, I can get some stuff that's a little more manageable, where I can keep my speed up and not worry about the sketchy factor quite as much.
Right. So, well, I have not been hiking. I've been. It was rain out this weekend, and then I got Easter coming up. I'm going to be a godfather for my niece. She's getting baptized and confirmed and all that fun stuff. So, no hiking but I have been busily planning my trip to Hawaii in October, and I'm looking at the Mauna Kea hike, which is the state high point. So it looks like. It doesn't look like the most beautiful hike. It looks like you're just sort of like hiking on a desert with like a moon landing type of hike. Like there's there's no trees or anything. It's just like a dirt path. So I don't know. We'll see how it goes. Yeah,
that's going to be one. I once had this mission, and maybe I'll get to it someday, of doing all the state high points. And when I was looking at that in a research way, that was one that I was like, oh boy, that one's.
Yeah, it's 13,500 feet. I think you start, I got to look at the rules for the state high point, but I think you start around 4,500 or 5,000 feet below the summit and then climb up. But it just looks like a really dusty, kind of like not a super scenic hike. I mean, you can see out to the ocean and stuff, but the videos I've been watching, it doesn't strike me as the most scenic hike.
Yeah, and that's the downside, is then you've got that risk reward of, okay, I'm doing this. What's my payoff? And sometimes that can factor into that motivation to keep you going when the trail's beating you up.
Right. So yeah, and we'll see how it goes. I mean, altitude sickness is legit. You got to think about it at that level because it's pretty high. So I have no idea how my body will react at that elevation, and I don't know what you do. I guess what they tell the visitors is that there's a visitor center. I don't know where it is, at like 11,000 feet or something, and they make people wait there 30 minutes before going up if they're going to drive up to the top. So right, I think you slowly would acclimate as you're hiking up, but I could do more research on it.
Yeah, I guess stamina building, acclimation. I've never done anything, of 10K plus type of stuff. So that would be foreign to me, but definitely something I would want to ease my way into. Yeah. So we'll see how it goes, but I'll get out in the white soon enough. But anyway, CS Coffee, Athlete Ready. So I'm going to need to drink a lot of CS Coffee to get ready for this Hawaii trip. So Athlete Ready, CS Instant Coffee. Visit them at www.csinstant.coffee. Check it out. All right. So quickly, notable listener hikes of the week. You can definitely tag SLASR on your adventures to be considered for the SLASR's hike of the week. No guarantees that you'll be plugged, but we'll do our best. So this first guy, Gingerbeard Keen, he's actually the guy that I went to Katahdin with the first time I went there. So I'll mention him. So Mike Keen, shout out. So Mike Keen did a sunrise on Franconia Ridge. And then my co-host last week, Nick and Nature, hiked Cannon. Matter of fact, me and Nick did a So You Wanna on that Cannon hike. So shout out to him. PC Hiker did Garfield and Kinsman this past weekend. So that's good. They're getting out. And then Heart Diseased Hiker 75 did Black Mountain via the Chippewa Trail. You must hit that one quite a bit. Yeah, that's kind of right in the wheelhouse here. Yeah. Yep, that's a great one. And then my friend Jakester did Mount Kankamangas with our friend Peter. So shout out to him. They're really getting into the bushwhacking New Hampshire 100 highest. So I saw some pictures there. It looked pretty good. So I got to get him on and maybe talk about that one. And then Meg Z0682 did the Welsh Dicky Loop, and she's on number 9 of 52 with a view. Nice. So any picks for you for the notable hike of the week? I think I got to go with Jakester and Kankamangas, because that is, I'm partial to the bushwhack and stuff and the 100 highest, because that's something I want to be transitioning into. So that'd probably be my leaning. Okay. All right. Well, Jakester, Andy is hooking you up, so I'm going to text him later tonight and tell him like he has to listen to this episode now. So yeah, and it is now. You're bonded. It's imperative.
And there was much rejoicing.
All right. So now moving on to our segment of the week here. So we're going to talk a little bit about Baxter State Park in Mount Katahdin. So I was interested in having you come on anyway, and then just co-hosting made sense. So you recently did a solo winter hike to Mount Katahdin, and you took a route that I don't think is as common. I feel like a lot of people go in through, like, what is it, Roaring Brook and Chimney Pond or whatever, but you came in via the A-Ball campground. So can you talk a little bit about, I guess, to hike Katahdin in the winter, there's logistics that you need to factor in. Do you want to just give a rundown of, like, how do you go about getting approval to get in there, and then talk a little bit about the entire experience?
Sure. So it's definitely an involved process, because the Baxter State Park Authority really wants to vet winter hikers to make sure that they have the requisite experience and gear to get out there and to complete their routes without a high likelihood of needing a rescue or running into issues. So you start by going on the Baxter State Park website. You can review the information there. You can look at routes. You can look at campgrounds and their recommended gear lists and things that they have. There's a lot of resources there, and you can kind of comb that over. And then there's an application basically that you fill out. So you get in there, and the application, it'll ask you for your past experience above tree line in winter conditions. It'll ask you for past Baxter Park hiking experience, basically for your familiarity with that terrain there. And then it'll basically go into this battery of asking you, what do you have for gear? And not only what is it, but how is it identified? So like for your parka or your outer shell, like what color is it? And these are things that they're going to retain. So if you were to run into issues, that you'd have identifying things about you. So right. They'll look at this, and you'll put this in, and essentially they'll review your first, second, and third. I believe it had spots for route choice and campground, and then your gear and your experience. And they'll basically make a yes or no decision on whether or not this application or this permit is going to be approved, and they'll get back to you. And it's pretty quick. I mean, I think they got back to me within like a business day or two to let me know that I was approved. And I've heard, this is the only winter app I've ever put in, but I've heard it can sometimes be tougher to get approved for a solo hike, because it will ask you that, is this a group app, application, or is this an application for solo?
What was the thought in your mind around, like, were you asking around to see if anybody wanted to join you, or did you have it in your mind that, I want to do this solo as a challenge or an interesting thing, or I just wanted to get out there to clear my head, or, was there a specific thought around going solo?
Yeah, actually there was. It was kind of a combination between the challenge for myself and also a little bit of, getting out to clear my head and to kind of, take a step to really embrace, because Baxter is really one of my happy places. I've done a lot of hiking in Baxter Park, done a lot of hiking on Katahdin, but never in the winter. So this has been kind of on my bucket list to do a winter Katahdin. And I thought it would be more meaningful for me to do it solo, and to really, put myself out there and not just test my skills, but really have some alone time in a place that I've really, come to be bonded with. So it was a purposeful choice in that regard, and I'm really glad that I did it. It definitely presented some unique challenges and some thought processes that I went through of being out there alone, but it was something that I'm going to count now as one of the more rewarding hikes I've definitely ever done. Yeah,
definitely a bucket list activity for sure. So you get approval, and then you've got to make the decision. I mean, when I've thought about doing a winter hike on Katahdin. I will get out there at some point. I always am curious, though, about most of my friends that have gone out there, the typical setup that I see them is they'll put together these sleds, which they'll call a polk, and you basically set up a sled, you connect it with this PVC piping, and then you'll connect it to your waist belt, and then you drag your gear in, because you got to bring in a fair amount of gear, because you're base camping and then staying overnight and then climbing the next day. So did you go back and forth about, like, what were you going to sled in? Were you going to backpack in? What was your thought process around that?
Yeah, it definitely takes some consideration, because the amount of gear and just stuff you got to bring to be prepared. This is the real backcountry here. I mean, there's nothing that's close and accessible. So you really got to take that into consideration. And the sled makes it a little easier with a heavy load, but I basically experimented with just loading up my 65-liter pack. And I loaded this thing. I don't know how much it weighed, but it's the heaviest pack I maybe have ever carried on trail. Mm-hmm. And I did have some regrets. I'm thinking in the future, maybe I will try the sled method. Because as I was snowshoeing in on the tote road, there were a couple of times that no matter how well I had my pack straps adjusted and everything, that I had to bend over and just put my hands in my straps and just take some of the pressure off, for a second when I was taking a quick break. And I never have to do anything like that. So it was a heavy loaded pack for sure. Yeah.
And and then you get a route. Like, did you tell them when you put the application in that you had, so you ended up going up A-Ball, which is not, I think, the most popular route. Was that your first pick, or did you want to go in another direction?
Yeah, it was actually, the thought that I had into that was I've done all my hiking on Katahdin has been from basically what I'll call the chimney side. So I've done every trail over there, up to Chimney Pond and then Hamlin Ridge, Dudley, Cathedral, Saddle, the Knife Edge. Roaring Brook is usually, base camp or Chimney Pond. So I wanted to do something. There was a thought process there where maybe I should stick to what I know, but I also wanted to do something profoundly different, provided I researched it. And that's when I came into looking at A-Ball and going in from, essentially that, instead of the east side, rather maybe the west side. And there is also an easier access point when you go in that side. So my trek from winter parking into the A-Ball campground was 4.7 miles. Mm-hmm. Whereas when you're going into that other side to get to, say, Roaring Brook, I believe it's more in the 10 or 11, it's considerably a longer, access point just to get in to set up your base camp at that point. So that's something that factored in for me, but also just the newness of taking on that other side.
Yeah. And the drawback of going A-Ball, for people that are thinking about this, is when you go in on the chimney side, that's when you get the opportunity to hike across Knife Edge and most of the routes. When you come in from A-Ball, you bypass that, essentially. Yeah. But the bonus is that you do get to go up these like cool slides. It's pretty steep and fun, and it's its own level of challenging. And we'll talk about like the climb as well. But so when you get there, you parking, and then you're heading in on the tote road. Do you see anybody at all? Was the trail broken out? Was there anybody around? What's it like when you get started?
So when you park at winter parking, so basically you're going in on the logging road, the Golden Road there, and then there's this parking lot right near A-Ball Bridge, and you park there. You get your gear together, and then you link over to a network of trails that are essentially traveled often by rangers on snowmobiles and, people on, say, cross country. So they're pretty well packed. I didn't have snowshoes on at this point. I just had spikes, and, the terrain was pretty agreeable. And as you get closer to like the park and get on the tote road proper from these connector trails, same thing. That's basically groomed in there. So you got shared traffic with snowmobiles, you've got cross country skiing, and then you've got people like me that are, either snowshoeing in or, maybe they've got spikes on. But it's wide, it's groomed, so it's pretty accessible. So this piece is, the part that, we'll call it the easy part, because it's 4.7 miles. It's only 720 feet of gain, and you can get it done pretty quick, getting in there, because the conditions are really, they're maintaining it. So you're not finding anything that hasn't been touched or that you've got to break trail on or anything like that.
Okay. And then when you got 4.5 or 5 miles to get in there, and then what's the plan? So I've been to A-Ball campground, and I've stayed there and basically just set up my tent, and you could pull a car right in there, and we kept all of our stuff in a car. But obviously in the winter you're not doing that. I saw some pictures. So you did stay in a lean-to, so you didn't need a tent. Yep. So that saves a little bit of weight, right? Yeah,
that helped. I looked at what I was prepared to do. And I was comfortable with lean-to. That's another reason, just to quickly reference, a lot of people go in on the other side there via Roaring Brook and then Chimney, because there's access to bunkhouses that are actually heated as an option to stay. I know that I'm fine in the cold, so I wasn't averse to the lean-to situation. And yeah, I definitely saved some weight not bringing the tent. So getting in, I saw some snow machines and I saw some people going out, but I didn't see anyone going in when I was going in. I actually encountered a ranger on my way in that said, when I told her who I was, she said, "Oh, you're the one." And I like, "Oh, the one. Okay."
You're the crazy guy.
Think in until I got to the campground and realized there's nobody here. There wasn't even a ranger. The ranger that was stationed at that campground was off. So there was no one even at that station and no other campers. So that was a kind of a very peaceful, but kind of a eye-opening greeting of, yep, it is just me in here. And at least at this point in this exact section.
Yeah. And you were able to get a fire going. Did you have to carry firewood in with you?
I was able to obtain some firewood from, at cost from the ranger cabin there.
Yep.
And then I was able to collect, some dead and down for some kindling. And I did have to shovel the fire pit out. I didn't think about this logically. When I got there, they had assigned me to a specific lean-to. And I figured, well, that's where I'm going to go. That's where I'm assigned. And that one wasn't shoveled out, at least the fire pit area. And a bunch of the other ones were. And rather than just moving my lean-to, I figured, no, I'm going to stick with what they gave me. But there was no one else there, which I guess I didn't know for sure. But, I went and grabbed the shovel off the porch of the ranger cabin and shoveled out the pit so I could get some airflow and get some of the snow and ice out of there so it wouldn't melt all over the fire. But, yeah, that was my first thing, is I wanted to get water and fire all set up for my campsite.
Right. And then did you have any trouble sleeping? Were you too excited to get to bed, or were you pretty much exhausted and ready to crash?
I was pretty excited. It took me a little while to get to sleep. I was listening to some owl in the distance, and great horned owl was calling, and it was actually a nice night. The moon was out, everything was still, and just that absolute serene, silent, that you can't appreciate until you're in it. So between excitement and just thinking about, what I was going to do the next day, and also a little bit of concern for the weather that I had at that point, because the next day was going to take a little bit of a turn. It took me, I probably didn't get to sleep until maybe after 11.
Yeah, that's another thing about the weather. So there's no cell connection out there, I'm assuming, right?
I was shocked that there was a loose one, and I couldn't believe it when I had it in the campground. I didn't even think to try it at first, because I just assumed there'd no way. No other time I've been in Baxter Park have I had really anything.
Yeah.
But I could actually send some texts out, and I could pull up some stuff very loosely to check updated weather. But I did make a point to check the updated forecast at the ranger cabin. And unfortunately, the best day to hike would have been the day I got in. Yeah. Or maybe the day after I hiked, although there was some softening going on. My day had some socked in and some wind going on, which we can get to. But I did know that going in, and it was something that the forecast had changed from a few prior days. So it did kind of dishearten me a little bit.
Yeah. And it's one of those things where you're like, all right, well, I only have the days I have, and I've got to make the best of it. But obviously, you got to judge whether or not it's safe. But so the A-ball slide. So you get up in the morning, have your breakfast, have your coffee, and the A-ball trail, to me, it's like it's a kind of a slide. Like to me, I would think that you've got to factor in a little bit of like avalanche concern. Like when I've hiked it in the summer, it's like not summer, in the fall, it's a bit of a loose scree field. Like there's definitely sections there where you switch back and forth a bit, and it's very steep and not. I would assume in winter conditions, like you do have to factor in that steepness and, have crampons available, and then also keep an eye out to make sure there's no avalanche risk.
Right. And that was something that had kind of weighed into my decision as I was looking, because I did have the campground for a couple nights, and it looked like the following day might have been a better opportunity for views and things like that. But there was a drastic warm up coming, and I didn't want to deal with a snowpack that was going to be softening and potentially getting more unstable. So the morning when I woke up, I knew that's when I was going to head out. And, I totally was prepared to turn around if I saw something I didn't like, or if I hit a time I didn't feel comfortable with continuing on. But I knew that I didn't want to push it to the next day and potentially deal with a snowpack that has essentially had the ability to have the sun cooking on it and loosening up, because the temperature difference is about to be dramatic from that one day to the next there.
Yeah. And Katahdin is unique, and there's really, I'm trying to think of like if there's any equivalent in the White Mountain. I mean, a little bit of like if you top out on Huntington and you get to the Alpine Garden, a little bit around like, I would say like the if you hike from Lakes of the Cloud over to Boot Spur, that's a little bit of a tableland there. But there's not like a tableland as big and significant as Katahdin. But essentially what you're doing with A-Ball is you're going up this really steep, I think it's like, I'm just counting the contour lines here. You got 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16. You get about 2,000 feet of climbing, it looks like. And then you top out of the tableland section. So can you talk a little bit about like the top section of the slide as you break above tree line?
Sure. So when you're going up A-Ball, the first, I think it's like 1.7 or 1.9 miles is a steady climb, but you're mostly, you're below tree line at that point. There's nothing too demanding about it. And then right around 2.2, you break tree line. And that's when you start getting into, a little bit of the switchback stuff going on. You've got, it does meander back and forth a bit. And then when you get up to, I think it's like right around 4,000-ish feet, that's when you really start to tackle that last bit of the slide. And that's the only part of the hike where I was like, on high alert for the sketchy factor, because at this point, I had been in and out of switching between snowshoes into microspikes into trail crampons. And this was the section where I'm like, okay, a mistake here could be significant. And it was a lot of, there had been people up in recent times. So there were places where the trail was well established, and there were places where it was wind blown off, and there wasn't a lot of drifting. I actually had a fortunate set of conditions, so I didn't have to worry about crazy drifts or places where it was super hard to navigate. There was, I think, one point on tablelands, but also one point when I got to maybe just below or right around 4,000 feet, where I knew that I was kind of heading east, and I was going to be taking a turn to the northeast, where I did, check my compass, because the trail, at that point it was totally socked in above that, maybe around 3,500 and up, maybe even a little lower. So I really had to pay attention to my bearings, and that slide, that's significant. I could see how there was a report on the weather report at the cabin that the avalanche danger was considered low, and there wasn't, any notable risk for the time I was there. But I could see under the right conditions, I'm not as familiar with Katahdin and how the wind loading sets up on that side like I would be on, say, Washington. But, under the right conditions, there would be definite avalanche damage in that slide from, right around 4,000 feet up to like 4,600, I think, before the tablelands kick in.
Yeah. And there is a feature on the slide. I don't know if you saw it or not, but there's a diving board, you call it. So there's like this rock that sticks out, and like in the summertime, it's not that bad. You can walk out on it, but I don't know if I'd go out there in a solo winter hike. But yeah, there's some cool little features.
I was tempted, but no, I definitely didn't wet the whistle on that.
Yeah, no, good call. And then so you make it up to the tablelands, and then it's longer than you think, but it's not super long. Maybe a half a mile or so, and you're walking kind of in this. You're going up a little bit, but eventually you're looking for the iconic wooden Katahdin sign, right?
Right. Once you get to the junction of Hunt and A-Ball, it does get very gradual at that point for a bit, and it kind of lulls you into a little bit of a false sense of security that you're pretty much almost there. But then when the trail turns northeast from more of an easterly, when it comes up to Baxter Peak for that last little push, you do start to gain some elevation again. And at that point, you're kind of beat, or at least I was. And, you almost think that when you get to that first part of the tablelands there, that the summit is just around the corner. But this is another place where I checked my compass, because I remembered, looking at my map, all right, I'm going to turn northeast for the final push here, and I've got some more elevation gain to do. And sure enough, it beat me up pretty good going up that last bit, because I was a little wiped.
Right, yeah. And it is when you get visibility, like the views are incredible. Like I've been up there in the fall where I had 100-mile visibility, and it's just insane. But you're dealing with like low visibility, so hey, it's a winter hike. We talked about this before. I think we started recording. We were like, well, I don't go out if the weather's not great. But in this case, if it's Baxter, then you're getting out. So
Yeah, this was the exception. And oddly, out of all the times I've been in Baxter, or at least I've been on Katahdin, I had some mixed conditions on North Brother, but the times I've been on Katahdin, this was the worst in terms of view. I've had incredible luck on all my summer and fall ascents on Katahdin. This was the one, socked in one I had. So I guess I can't really count myself that unlucky in that sense.
Right. So, and then how much time did you spend on the summit? And what was the state of the sign? Was it buried or was it? No,
it wasn't buried. It was actually had a good bit of rime on it that I brushed off, and it wasn't like, I've seen people's pictures sometimes where it's drifted in pretty good because having been there in the non-winter, I know it's a pretty formidable sign. It's got some height to it, and you could tell that there was a packed layer of crusty snow that had diminished the height of the sign, but it wasn't buried up at all. And I beat some of the rime off so I could, get my quick picture. And then I headed out of there. Winds were, they weren't super high, but they were probably going between 35 and maybe 50. So it wasn't wonderful. And that in conjunction with the fact that I was solo and that it was, socked in, there wasn't a lot to take in. It was kind of a tag and get headed back down within pretty quick succession.
Yeah, and you wouldn't have wanted to go over the knife edge in those windy conditions anyway. So it ended up like the route ended up being like, at least it was achievable that you could get to the summit that way.
Right. Yeah. The out and back, from this side is pretty straightforward. The knife edge is probably my favorite trail that I've ever hiked, but the siren of a winter knife edge traverse is something that I'll look into, but definitely not something that I was. That I'm quite ready for yet, nor would I have even attempted on a day like this, even if it was something that was in the plan.
Yeah, and I think that for the listeners, so if you're, I wouldn't say this in the winter, but if you are, if you do go to Baxter and you're going to hike Katahdin, I would recommend if you do stay at the Able campsite or campground, I would recommend planning to do the same route. You go up the Able Trail, Able Slide, but then if the weather's good, then hitting Hamlin is like a no-brainer because you walk back across the tablelands, and it's sort of the equivalent of like, I would say it's very similar to like the lower part of the Gulf Side Trail as it traverses like the King Ravine in Mount Adams. It's sort of like that vibe, a little bit longer distance, sort of like, also think of like maybe Boot Spur hiking over to like Lion's Head. That's kind of like what you're doing. Similar. You're just basically traversing a big ravine and, but the views are incredible the whole way. You look down into that like Chimney Pond area and it's definitely great. And it's not that much elevation gain. You dip down, I think maybe 400 feet and then climb back up about another 400. So, and then you just come across, you can do a cutoff trail, or you can just follow back over to the other summit and come back down. But in the better conditions, I think that double it up for sure on Baxter and Hamlin Peaks.
Right. Yeah. You get another main 4K that way. And the views are just incredible. I did Hamlin for the first time semi-recently in a fall trip. And, we went up Hamlin Ridge from Chimney and, for a sunrise. And first light on Hamlin, that was just gorgeous, just breathtaking experience. And then, hike over from Hamlin to Baxter Peak. You're walking that ridge line. You got, like you said, that stark view looking down into Chimney Pond. And it's a pretty, you've got some game, but it's a pretty gradual push up to Baxter Peak at that point. And then you got your choice to come down, like something like Saddle or something if you're going on that side. So, yeah, Hamlin, highly recommend hit Hamlin if you're there, because why not? That's it, especially if you've got the view in your pocket to be able to have. Yeah.
And it's it's definitely a bucket list trip. I think anybody that, if you've done your 4,000 footers and you're looking for a new challenge, like get out there to Baxter. But just getting back to your hike, so then you head down. Was the climb down the trail, was it sketchier than going up, or did you feel pretty comfortable at that point?
Yes, I definitely was a lot slower going down, at least for that first part. Once I, got back to the junction with Hunt and going down that first, piece of the slide there. And once I got to the section that switched back more, I was a little more confident. And I, that's when I was throwing back on, as I call my rock spikes. But that first bit of coming down is definitely where I took my time a bit, and I was like, okay, I'm going to be very methodical about this. There's no room for error. I'm not going to rush. I'm going to do some sidestepping. I'm going to, assess my, foot placement before I do it, and, really think about it. Whereas I kind of got a little sigh of relief once I started to get down to those switchback sections, because I was like, okay, I know from here I'm going to be fine as long as I don't, make a weird decision. So I think that was probably the most mentally exhausting part of the hike, was coming down that pitch there below the tablelands.
Yeah, and I haven't been in the winter, but I can tell you that I do. It's kind of burned into my memory how like nice and peaceful it is. Once the trail starts reconnecting with the A-Ball stream, then that's a nice, beautiful part of the forest. Like it opens up a little bit, and I can imagine it must have been like just so peaceful and quiet walking back.
Yeah, that experience of coming, basically seeing no one on trail all day, having that pristine wilderness to myself, it was really grounding, and it really gave me an opportunity to connect with a beautiful wild space that means a lot to me, and being able to do it in a way where I'm supporting myself and I'm using skills I've acquired, and, actualizing a dream I've had. I've kind of, some people look at it, and I definitely looked at it this way. Winter hiking Katahdin seems inaccessible because it's all these hoops you got to jump through. You got to do the permit. You got to go winter parking and then hike in on the tote road and all this stuff. And I think for a long time I looked at it and I said, oh, that seems like a lot of work. I'll stick to doing it in the summer. But I'm really glad I bit this off and took on this challenge of doing it in the winter, because just that austere and stark beauty of Katahdin in the winter, and being able to be out there in a place that, I love the Whites. The Whites are my home, but there's something about Katahdin, there's something about Baxter Park that is a world unto itself, and it has a different feel. And anyone that's been there, I think they'll agree that, geologically very similar, but it just has this different feel, and that's always had a pull for me.
Yeah. So it's quite an accomplishment. Then when you got back to camp, I'm assuming your plan was that you were going to stay over another night and then haul out in the morning, but you called an audible.
I did. I actually, once I got down, especially below tree line, I was cooking. I was blazing down the trail. So I made pretty good time. And when I got back to camp, the combination of factors led me to think, well, nothing's stopping me from hiking back out the tote road and back to winter parking and just cutting my trip early.
Yeah. Because so what are you thinking? Like 2.5 hours, maybe 3 hours tops to get out?
Oh, to get out. Yeah. It was like 2.5, maybe 2. So it wasn't bad. So I knew it wasn't going to be a lot, and I knew the warm up was coming. So at this point on my way down, things had already begun to soften, and I had to use snowshoes in areas that I didn't on the way up as things, really loosened up. So I was thinking, well, the same thing's going to happen, even though it's a little more packed and groomed on the tote road. I don't want to be, punching through stuff and sweating on the way out. So let me get going. And I knew the Golden Road too, that was going to turn into a mud bowl the next day. So if I stayed another night, maybe my car travel would be a little more interesting as well. So number of factors, I said, all right, I'm going to call it early. I made sure to sign out and make it clear, left early, date, time, to no one, if, they came across the log, they weren't like, well, where's this guy? Where's this camper at? Yep. So there's a couple places, you sign out at the ranger station at A-Ball, and then there's basically a sign in on the connector trail when you're coming from winter parking before you get into the tote road. There's a kiosk where you can sign in and out there as well.
Nice. Well, congratulations. And I've got my old GPS route from the Baxter Hamlin that I'll include in the show notes, and then I'll put some additional information in the show notes about Katahdin, how you can sign up for a permit in the winter season as well as getting a permit in the regular season. And I think my suggestion for people is if you can go midweek, that's probably a good option. But I've done it in the fall. I've never really gone in the summertime. I don't know how the bugs are, but I feel like if you get a chance, like you should get this on your list and get up there. Absolutely. It's like I said, it has this allure to it, and it's geographically so interesting with just the way the terrain is on Baxter, and if you've never been to Chimney Pond, just looking up at Katahdin from that vantage point of Chimney Pond, it takes your breath away. I can't
recommend it enough to people that this is something, if you are passionate about a really wild space, because it has that more wild feel. There's the controlled access of Baxter. It's a little more remote. It's kind of that next level up of, if you've done your New Hampshire 4Ks and you're loving that, go hit your Maine 4Ks. And when you go to Baxter Park, try to hit, the brothers as well, because while you're up there, you can get those and, make a whole trip out of it. It's just beautiful country there.
Yeah, well, congratulations on getting out there solo. You're a braver man than I am, but I'll be knocking on your door when I plan my trip. But we're hitting time here, so I had some national stories I was going to cover, but we'll push those to the next episode. Andy, are you coming back again? Like, you've had your chance to do the co-hosting. Did I scare you, or are you going to come back in the future?
I would love to be back. I think this is something that really tickles a sense in me that it's fulfilling. I like this. So if you would be so kind, I would love to return and hit up some more co-hosting in the future for sure.
Yeah, definitely. So thank you so much. And you're going to co-host this. You're going to have to let me drive one of those engines one of these days. So
I think we can do a fair trade.
Okay.
Get me a microphone and then I'll get you some seat time in the engine.
That's a deal. All right.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed the show, you can subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podbean, YouTube, or wherever you listen to podcasts. If you want to learn more about the topics covered in today's show, please check out the show notes and safety information at SLASRPodcast.com. That's SLASRPodcast.com. You can also follow the show on Facebook and Instagram. We hope you'll join us next week for another great show. Until then, on behalf of Mike and Stomp, get out there and crush some mega peaks.
Now covered in scratches, blisters, and bug bites, Chris Staff wanted to complete his most challenging day hike ever.
Fish and Game officers say the hiker from Florida activated an emergency beacon yesterday morning. He was hiking along the Appalachian Trail when the weather started to get worse. Officials say the snow was piled up to 3 feet in some spots, and there was a wind chill of -1 degree.
And there's 3 words to describe this race. Do we all know what they are? Only one hell!
Here's Lieutenant James Nealon, New Hampshire Fish and Game. Lieutenant, thanks for being with us today.
Thanks for having me.
What are some of the most common mistakes you see people make when they're heading out on the trails to hike here in New Hampshire?
It seems to me the most common is being unprepared. And I think if they just simply visited hikesafe.com and got a list of the 10 essential items and had those in their packs, they probably would have no need to ever call us at all.